this afternoon, but we're here. That's brilliant. So at this time, I'm going to just, excuse me, welcome everyone to this week's series of Belonging, exploring the BAME experience. Candid interviews with BAME individuals just about their life stories. And this week we've got the pleasure of having Kayisha Payne. And I'm going to let her explain some of the amazing things that she's done as part of her story. It's really a pleasure to have her with us this afternoon. So, Kayisha, I'm going to kick off by just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your history, and then we can go into this discussion about some of the amazing things that you're doing and would like to do in the future.
Sure, thank you. So, hi everyone, my name is Kayisha Payne. I guess I'll start with my background first, because I'd like to say I'm very proud of who I am and where I've come from and the things that I represent. So I come from quite a big family. I have 2 older brothers, 2 older sisters. I'm the youngest of 5. My dad is Nigerian. He was born in Nigeria and came over to London when he was like 2 or 3. And my mum is Jamaican, but a British-born Jamaican. So my grandparents came over here during the Windrush generation. And I've grown up in Southeast London, so I'm a South Londoner, and I'm very, very proud of that as well. So in terms of what I do, I'm a chemical engineer by training. I did my undergrad at Aston University in Birmingham in chemical engineering. And then I did my master's at Imperial College in chemical engineering as well. But the reason why I chose to not stay on and do the master's at Aston was because I wanted a bit more flexibility in what I chose for my master's. And going to Imperial College allowed me to have that flexibility and pretty much choose all the modules that I was interested in. So most of the modules I chose were to do with biochemical engineering and pharmaceutical process development, because at that point, that's the industry that I wanted to go into. But before that, I took a year out during my undergrad to do a placement year. And I was a process engineer at a cosmetic manufacturing company. Okay. And that was really, really cool. I'd say that that's probably one of the best experiences that I've had that's really laid the foundation for my professional career. And I feel like I had really, really good managers that gave me the confidence to just go and do whatever I could and I guess test my professional capabilities. So from like 2-3 months in, I was leading validation processes. I got to travel to Italy a couple of times to commission a new piece of machinery. And then I got to be the project lead to launch a new lip gloss, which is really cool. So I think that was a really, really great year that I had. And then when I finished Imperial, I ended up going to a construction company called Mace. And I was in their pharmaceutical and technology team. And I didn't stay there for long because it wasn't what I wanted to do. I think I was there for about 8 or 9 months. And then I left because it wasn't as technical as I was expecting it to be. And I really wanted to be in an environment and have my role that was still based and had a heavy element of, the scientific realm and technical realm. So I didn't stay there long. But that was quite funny because I had quite a few people that were like, oh, you should stay for at least a year because it won't look good on your CV if you bounce around. But I had a really good reason for me not staying there, and where I wanted to get my chemical engineering chartership, I just knew that if I stayed there, I wasn't going to get that. Right. So then in June 2018, I moved to AstraZeneca, based in Cambridge, and I joined in their process engineering and packaging team. And I'm still there now. So essentially what I do is tech transfer of fill finish processes to manufacture our drugs on a commercial scale.
So what was it that drove your passion to go into chemical engineering? As a Black woman, what was it about chemical engineering that kind of like excited you? What was it?
I think it was the flexibility and what I could do. So in school, I just loved chemistry. Like I was a huge nerd for chemistry, absolutely loved it. But I didn't know what my options were. I thought I could only become like a chemistry teacher or a chemist. And those two options just didn't really float my boat. So I had a chat with my, well, for my A-levels, I did biology, chemistry and maths. And when you're in first year, well, year 12, you really start to look at your options of what you can do when you go to uni. But at the same time, I had this weird obsession with crime shows. So I was like, okay, I love crime shows and I also love chemistry. So maybe I should become a forensic scientist.
Right, okay. CSI.
Yeah, exactly. But I did work experience with, I think it was Mitcham Police Station in their forensic science department. And it just wasn't what I expected it to be, what I saw on TV. I thought I'd be able to go out into the crime scene and collect all of the evidence and then go back to the lab and test it. But that's not the case. You have, like police officers or just people in the police station that go out and get the evidence and then they send it off to a lab in the middle of nowhere to do the testing. So I was like, okay, that's not really what I want to do now either. And then I had a chat with my careers advisor and he was like, okay, well, it seems like you like to get your hands dirty. You obviously like chemistry and you want something where you have a lot more options. So when he mentioned chemical engineering, I did my own research about it. And then I went to a few university open days. And then I realized once I do have my degree, I could either go into oil and gas, cosmetics, energy, or even go into finance, law, or, but specialized in chemical engineering. And I just thought, I think that's actually a really good idea because then it keeps my options open.
Yeah. So you've already said that you had a number of, the career advisor was quite instrumental in helping you to focus your attention. But what was it that gave you that underlying passion for education, for staying in, well, not necessarily staying in academia, but actually pursuing a more academic kind of career post 16, 18 kind of thing?
I kind of felt like I had to, in a sense.
Okay.
Because I've not come, so I'm the only one in my family that's even got A-levels or gone past GCSEs. As I said, the youngest of 5.
Yeah.
And my parents invested quite a lot into my education. So I went to private school and I always felt like, okay, now it is my duty to, I kind of have to carry on and go to university and, build a career that way. And my parents did always say, they didn't make me, go to university, but I think just because of the environment that I was in and the schools that I went to, that was just the thing that you did next.
Yeah. So I just want to explore that a little bit. So there was not a pressure, but there was not even an expectation, but there was a desire on your part to fulfill the potential which your parents could see within you. How did you find it when you were at like private school, your sense of belonging within those kinds of environments, and how has that helped you now, would you say?
I would say that I have 2 very distinct kind of private schools. So the first one I went to, I've pretty much been in private school my life up until year 12. But from year 7 to 9, I went to a private school in South London, and it was, very multicultural and everyone kind of just got on. And so I didn't feel like I was out of place or anything. Yeah. And then my parents moved to Kent. So then I moved to a private school in Kent. And then when I got there, I think there was about 100 girls in the year and there was like just 4 black girls.
Ooh.
And that was quite a huge shock for me because, I mean, I'd always been in an environment where, it was just very, very diverse.
Yeah.
So then I got to this school. I think I actually cried on my second day because I was like, where are all my friends? But I also don't think I had a bit of a great time there either. Well, the first year, because I think a lot of the girls, some people in school can be really horrible, but I remember there were two incidents where there was one girl that had said something like, my parents were chavs, and I was like, okay, like this, that's not very nice. And then I remember there was another time when there were a few girls in the year above that were just like completely talking in slang when I was around, and I knew that they were just talking about that they were, you know, I guess kind of taking the mick out of me. So that definitely even more so made me feel like, okay, maybe this isn't an environment that I should be in. But I guess the other side of the coin is that I think it did prepare me for, I guess, the world of work, because now I'm, you know, either one or one of the few Black people that's in my team, or in an environment with predominantly white people, and I don't feel that kind of sense of intimidation, or feel like I'm not supposed to be there. So I don't know, maybe I was conditioned from young from the school that I went to.
That's kind of like what I was thinking, is how well did that actually prepare you for coming into to being in the various environments that you wanted to be in, or that you find yourself in now? Because as you said, you're a chemical engineer. I noticed that you really did like the cosmetic year, industrial year, which you had, making makeup. What was it? Makeups and
yeah.
Great experience, I'm sure. But then also where you are now, I can imagine, as you said, there's only probably one or two of Black people who are in your team. But having experienced that before, do you think that that's helped you to make that transition, or how would you say that that's prepared you?
I think it's definitely helped me, and I would say it's helped me in the sense that I can truly be myself. I think towards the beginning, when it's all new to you, you kind of suppress the things that are important to you, or make up who you are in terms of like where you want to go on the weekends, or the type of music that you listen to, or the kind of films that you watch, just to kind of fit in and blend in. And I'm not going to lie, there are some situations where I'm very, you know, evident that I am the only Black person in the room. But I think now I've got to a point where I'm completely confident, like especially the job that I'm doing now, I'm very confident in my scientific and technical ability. And I've also grown to really be comfortable in my skin as well. So, I mean, even I think it was last year sometime when I was spending a lot of time in the lab, and in lab environments, people play the music that they want to listen to. So there was a time that I just put Bob Marley on because I like Bob Marley music.
I like it.
I want to play Coldplay or whatever music, or the opera in the lab, and everyone can enjoy it, then that's fine. But I was like, it's my turn now, and this is what I like to listen to.
Nice. But it's good that you actually found an environment where the group, I remember, well, I won't go into my experience, but I've been in situations where people have said, no, you can't play that. All right, that's not what we listen to. This is the radio station that we listen to, etc. So it's good that you're in an environment where people are actually able to show them their authentic selves. I think that's a real bonus. Another thing which I'd be interested in finding out is how then, because I know I've had a look on your profile, how then did your desire to develop your BBSTEM come about? Where did that come from? Because it's an amazing thing. But tell us a little bit about it, and where did it come from?
So the idea actually came about when I was doing my master's at Imperial. I think this was about January or February 2017. And I was out somewhere with my mum, and she had bumped into one of her old time school friends. And I think she's obviously very proud of my achievements and the things that I do. So she was bragging to her friends, saying, "Oh, my daughter's studying chemical engineering at this really good uni," and this guy was like, "Oh, I know someone that studied chemical engineering, and they're doing really well. They're traveling all around the world and things like that. They should meet." So I just thought it was a passing comment, because when people say that, they never really follow through with it. And so I was like, okay, and then went about my life. But then I think a month or two later, my aunt called me and was like, "Oh, this guy wants your number. Apparently you have similar career interests, and just reach out to him and kind of see what he wants," sort of thing. So I was like, okay. And I actually ended up going out to coffee with this guy. And I was just so inspired by him. I was actually like in awe of him, really, because he was a black guy, mid-30s. He came from a Caribbean background as well. Like our grandparents even knew each other from Jamaica, so we had similar upbringings. And he was just doing so well in the chemical engineering field, and he had been like headhunted. They'd opened up an office because they really wanted him in London. He developed his own software that people in the States were really interested in. And, like, I was just asking him loads of questions just about like his experience, but also technical questions that I didn't really feel comfortable asking my lecturers. And the conversation, it was just so impactful, and it had such a profound effect on me. And at the end, he was like, "If you need any help with or advice, like looking for jobs, if you need a referee for like your chemical engineering chartership, anything, literally my line's always open and I'll be more than happy to help." And it was at that point where I was like, I've never had this before. And I didn't know that there were actually successful Black chemical engineers that existed. So after that, I just felt like I really wanted to create some sort of network or platform where young Black people could see themselves in roles that they wanted to fulfill. So then for the rest of the year, I was actually having a look at statistics of the number of Black British people that go and study STEM roles, and then what the outcome is for after university. So I was really trying to build up a business case. And I'd say it's quite difficult, because when you look for statistics online, I don't think the UK is that great at collecting data around ethnicity, especially in science and engineering roles. And everything just kept pointing me to the States and, you know, what the story is for African Americans over there. And although it's similar, it's still very different. So although I didn't have that much data to go off, I just thought, okay, well, I know what my experience looks like in, you know, my surroundings, and it's probably not that different for other people. So yeah, I just said I'll just go ahead and launch it.
So can you give us, for the listeners, can you give us a little bit of an insight into what BBSTEM does? Because you've told us a little bit about the rationale behind it, but what is the practical element that you do, and what's the practical elements to it? Okay.
So when we first started, so that university students can sign up as student members and professionals can sign up as professional members. So over the last 2.5 years now, I think we've got about 300 professionals on our database, from literally entry-level kind of roles to well over 20 plus years of experience, covering a huge range of industries. And we also asked them if they're willing to be mentors or not. And most of them have said that they're willing to be mentors, which is really, really great. And then on the student side, we asked them what university they go to and the course that they're on. And recently, I'm really excited to say that we have actually launched our mentoring program now called Bridge. And we've, it's a 6-month e-mentoring program, and we've paired up our first 22 pairs. Which is really, really great. So that's one element where we support university students. Another thing is that we partner with organizations so that we can provide industry insight days. Because one of the things that I really wanted to be able to do when I started BBSTEM was give young Black people access to knowledge which we're doing through the mentoring scheme, and access to opportunities, which is what we're doing through the Insight Days. So we've run one so far with AstraZeneca, which was an in-person one last year. And we had about 35 university students come from all over the country to Cambridge for 9 a.m. to have a full day of what it's like to work in the pharma industry, the types of jobs that their degree can allow them to do. They started to build up their network because we had data scientists, formulation scientists, engineers, and senior leaders come to meet with them. So we're doing more of those. We've got another one with AstraZeneca this year, and we do have a few more as well lined up with other organizations, which is really, really exciting. We also do other kind of ad hoc events, which is all about upskilling and well-being. So during lockdown, we had 3 sessions of mental health awareness workshops for Black master's students, PhD students, and postdoctoral researchers. And that really tackled things like imposter syndrome and the different tools and mechanisms that you can use to overcome these things in your environment. And we learned a lot about how Black researchers are feeling in their establishments and the kind of things that they want to see to make them feel a lot more included. And then we had another event which was all around how you can use entrepreneurship. So how you can take your scientific training and launch a startup or a company, and how you go about doing that. So they're the kind of things that we do to support, I guess, university age and professionals. A couple of years ago, we did actually have, we partnered with the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust to get access to schools, because I think it is very, very important. If you want to target the STEM skills gap in the UK, you need to target
start early.
Exactly. So we did about 4 events with them. We went to schools in Southeast London where there's a high population of Black and minority ethnic students. And the pilot was really, really great, but we just haven't been able to get funding to continue that program. So that's just on the shelf now until we have the right resources to pick it up again.
So give me that's excellent, right? All of the schemes which you've talked about, the Industrial Insight Day, the Bridge, the e-mentoring programs which you're doing, sounds absolutely excellent. And also the entrepreneurship, there's loads of stuff. How many people are working on this? Because it sounds like such a rich environment, such a rich amount of information. How many people have you got working on your team?
So at the moment, there's 3 dedicated people working on the team, the BBSTEM core team. And we're all volunteers at the moment, so we just kind of fit it in with our day jobs. And then we also have 2 volunteers that are running the mentoring program until I can get funding to actually mobilize that program so it can stay sustainable.
So I don't mean to laugh, but it's a sarcastic laugh. So one of the major problems which you're encountering, because I can see the benefits of this, but the problem which you're encountering is bringing in the financial element into it. So I'm assuming that you don't charge the students and you don't charge the anyone who enrolls. It's not a membership.
No. And I did have a few people that suggested that I become sustainable by making it a membership model, but I've always been against that because I feel like there's enough barriers as it is for Black people to really reach their full potential in the STEM environment. And I didn't want to, I guess, gatekeep these kind of programs for them by having an additional membership model.
So how, I'm just trying to work out then, and you may be able to give me a little bit more insight. How are you going to start that again, Wayne, right? How do you think you can get yourself to be more sustainable? Because you've got your 5 or 6 volunteers, but you're all volunteers, but you're doing such impactful work.
Yeah.
How can you make it more sustainable? What's your strategy? What's your plan?
Yeah, so this is what I've been working on for, I would say, like the last year, because where I realized that I wasn't successful in winning funding from like grants or trusts, or I guess even the scientific organizations, that I had to take it in my own hands and then come up with my own income streams. So one of them is our Jobs and Opportunities Board, because for the first, up until now, we have so many people that say, can you advertise these roles to your network? So now that's an income stream if people want to advertise their roles to obviously diverse candidate of pool of people. Then we have that Jobs and Opportunities Board. Now when we partner up with companies for Insight Days, we request a sponsorship fee for that. And we'll be going back again for applying for grants for our mentoring program, see if that can be sustainable. And recently, over the last couple of months, quite a few people have been giving us donations.
Fantastic. I've got another couple questions. One of them being about what would it be in arguing about the need for a program like yours? What is the main benefit which you would say to an organisation of having more Black and ethnic minority individuals within their organisation? What would you say would be the rationale for them to increase the numbers, and how can your organisation help them to do that?
So the main thing that I try to highlight is that by having a diverse pool of people within your organisation, it does actually increase your productivity in terms of your work output and your sales. There's been so many studies that have actually shown that. So there is a very big tangible business case for that. I try not to make it like a D&I a D&I initiative, because I think there still is a shift with companies actually viewing D&I as like an actual business case that should be on their goals or things like that. So I try to link it to other things that companies really care about, which is their annual turnover and the quality and the output of their work. So that's like the foundation that I say, this is the reason why, you know, BBSTEM exists and why we want to collaborate with you. And then the conversation will shift in terms of how we can do that. So things like the Insight Days, where we're bringing you tangible and qualified candidates, because there is an eligibility criteria on that as well. So with AstraZeneca, students had to show that they were either on track for a 2-1 or had recently achieved a 2-1, and had to provide a motivational statement about what the day means to them. So it's not just saying any and anyone can come. It's we've got a qualified pool of candidates of people that, you know, have more than enough to join your graduate programs or occupy your roles.
So you're, if I'm right, you're looking at empowering and enhancing the job opportunities for not recent graduates, but people who are coming through. Is that right? So
yeah.
you want those who have the ambition, who have the skills, to be able to be given the opportunity to show their potential. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I like that. I really do. Right. I've just seen. I don't know if Sarah wants to ask this question or if I should ask the question. The question is this. Sarah, did you want to ask it or should I?
I don't mind. I have loads of questions. I'm just very quickly. I mean, it's fantastic. It's brilliant that you've set that up. You know, and I think it's great that we're very proud. It's an Imperial alumni that has done that. So, but I just want to say, you know, so you're at AstraZeneca now. What do they commit financially?
So for the Insight Days, we request a sponsorship amount of £8,500. which includes quite a lot of stuff. But also they have a strategy as well internally about how they can start to recruit from much more diverse pool of candidates. So they also have a subscription for our jobs board to advertise as many of their roles as possible.
Okay, and then the other thing that I really wanted to think about, because obviously, you know, as you mentioned, there's, you know, if you look at the pipeline, the overall pipeline, you've essentially got to start working in primary school, secondary school, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But if we just think about the Black students that have got into university, whatever university that is, once they're doing their degree and they have their degree, what do you think is the barrier or major barrier for them then going on to either get a master's or a PhD? Because there is, you know, even with the very low numbers, you know, as a percentage that get into university, there's also a big drop off for them getting into PhD. So what do you think, or what do your research suggest?
There's a number of things that contribute to the low numbers that translate into PhDs or industry. I think on the side where BBSTEM is really trying to help is the access to knowledge. So what can you actually do with your degree? You know, if you think there's just one kind of job that you can do, then you're limiting your options. And I think a lot of the time when a lot of Black people don't have it within their immediate network or their immediate family to just reach out to a scientist or an engineer and be like, what exactly can I do with this, and feel comfortable enough to have the conversation. I think that's one barrier, because the knowledge isn't there of what you can do with your degree. And then the access to opportunities, which I think couples up with biases on industry side or, you know, PhD funding side, where we can see that like loads of people have, I think Oxford did a study where they compared an ethnic sounding name to a white sounding name on a CV. The CV was exactly the same, but the name that had an ethnic sounding name had to apply to so many more positions to even get through the first stage.
Yeah. Do you think there is any, you know, actually, so for example, you went to do a master's. So what made you do a master's? Because it's an expensive thing. So do you think a barrier for doing a master's is the cost of the master's? Or
I think so, yeah, 100%. For me, I was able to do the master's at Imperial because my family live in London, so I was able to come back home and live at home. But I had another friend of mine that also got into Imperial but just could not afford to live in London. So I think there's also, you know, that wealth distribution side of it as well. Because I had a look at, I was reading an article a couple of months ago, and I think the average Black Caribbean household in the UK has 20 pence for every pound that a white household has in Britain.
Yeah. I saw that too. Sarah, I'm going to move on. I'll come back to you if you've got some. No, it's fine.
No.
I know that you've got lots of questions. I'm going to just bring William in.
Thank you, Kayisha.
Yeah. I believe William's got a question, which I think would be quite pertinent as well to the way the argument's going at the moment, the discussion's going.
Hi, Kayisha. Yeah, very inspirational. Thank you for appearing. Yes, my question is two-part. I suppose it was, did you ever consider an academic career, given that you were doing a master's at Imperial? And then what is your view of placements? Because, and you said you worked at the police station, I didn't like it, but then you did another placement and that proved quite pivotal. What's your sort of overall view of that? Because I suppose a lot of sort of placements or internships that sort of happen in kind of certain careers, they're always like unpaid.
Yeah.
It can almost be sort of quite a privileged elitist thing that ordinary people don't have access to. So I wondered what your view is of placements and the opportunities they provide.
Yeah. So just to answer your first question, I did consider an academic career. I did really want to go and do a PhD, but although my parents did support me with being able to do the masters, and I guess they gave me pocket money at the time, I just knew that they probably wouldn't have been able to support me even further by doing a PhD for a few more years. And I don't think it helps that PhD students don't get paid that well. So I think that's a huge barrier as well. And on your second question, I think they are so important, so important. I always try to encourage people to take a year out and do a placement. My placement was actually paid as well. So I think that helped. It was a 12-month, well, 14-month because it got extended. So 14-month placement, and that was paid. But I think companies need to do better, because if you're asking people to do unpaid work and they don't have the means to do that, then you're having a huge barrier there, which impacts them later on in line. Because then once you get to industry, some job descriptions are just really crazy to say, oh, you needed to have had X amount of years work experience, which can be a bit unrealistic for some entry level roles. And it's like they don't shift from that criteria without actually thinking, okay, you know, what's the reason for someone not being able to have this work experience, but what is their work ethic, what's their technical capability, and, you know, how can we train them up whilst they're here?
I think that feeds well into the kind of like second part of William's question, which was, is it kind of like the preserve of those who can afford to do that? Because as you said, within the application process, or for sometimes they're saying you need to have this amount of experience. And for some students, they're able to have obtained that experience, whereas for others, it's very, very difficult for that to be the case. I think we've lost her, or I've lost. Right. Kayisha, are you still there? Oh.
Okay, you're back there.
Yeah, both of us must have frozen out, so it must be something to do with the internet connections today. So yeah, I was just saying about that whole idea of the placement and the value that can be obtained from it, but also the barrier that it can cause if you're not able to access it for whatever reason, you know. So I think that's a really interesting thing. I think we've got another question from Yolanda. Yolanda, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Oh, great. Hi, Kayisha. Nice to hear your story, and great to see you. I was just wondering, because hearing about kind of the volunteers and the workload that must be behind growing BBSTEM, I was wondering whether there's anything in particular that you would have done differently, knowing what you know now, and then also to grow the network further, what do you see as the most like pivotal goal, like the next pivotal like goal post that you see?
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good question. I guess leading BBSTEM has been like a huge journey for me as well, because I've never really led a business like this or an organization. So I think there's always things that I could have improved on or probably done a bit differently, but I think generally no. In terms of like the big decisions that I've had to make, I wouldn't have done anything differently, because even though it's taken a while for it to get the traction that it's needed, I'm targeting the audience that I intended to reach out to. I think that's probably another important thing for me to mention, because one of the reasons why it took me so long to launch BBSTEM was because a lot of people were saying to me that I should to make my life a little bit easier, I should say that this organisation targets all ethnic minorities in terms of how it would be received by some people, because a lot of people don't like to say the word black, or think it's a threatening or rude term to say, because sometimes people are like, can I say black, or do I say coloured? Or so even just saying the word black can make people feel uncomfortable. And I did have someone say to me that if I did say that it targets all ethnic minorities, then I'd be in a much better standing point to get funding. And I feel like if I did say that this organisation was going to target all ethnic minorities, then I think I probably would have had an easier ride. But I've always been quite intentional and about who my target audience is, because I do understand that all ethnic minorities have challenges, but the ethnic groups between themselves have very different challenges, and the outcomes can be very, very different. So for example, I was looking at the Key Stage 2 attainment for maths and science, and Chinese kids do the best and Black Caribbean kids do the worst. And I just felt like that if I targeted all ethnic minorities, then it would be difficult for me to actually see a measurable impact with what I was doing. So in terms of, and I think that's a very key decision that I had to make right at the beginning. But I wouldn't have changed it. It has been really difficult, but as I said, I'm reaching the target audience that I intended to, and I'm getting valuable insights, and hopefully these insights can really help other organizations make the decisions. And then your next question was, what do I think would be pivotal to growing BBSTEM further? I think all I would say is just money, really, because we have the traction. We have so many different organizations reaching out to us at the moment, which is a lot more than what we can handle. And I just felt like if we had like a dedicated team that were paid to do their job, then we could continue making an even bigger impact than what we're doing now.
That's a very, very honest and valid answer. I'm going to just ask the final question, if that's okay, right? Just a minute. All right, Sarah, okay. I was going to ask the final question, but Sarah's just thrown one in. Sarah, do you want to make your statement?
Hi Kayisha, great talk. So apologies, I had technical issues. I missed the first 10-15 minutes. But yeah, so mine was almost more of a comment than a question, but it's following up on what you were saying. And it's that whole thing about now in these times, and I think it's great that you managed to do it before. For me, it's been in these post-George Floyd, new Black Lives Matter movement that I've felt able to be more specific when I'm talking about things. And if I'm talking about something that's a Black issue, to be able to talk about Black, as opposed to having to kind of say all ethnic minorities. And then when it's the situation when we're talking about all underrepresented groups, all minorities, to be able to say that, but to be in this situation now where we can actually say Black is a new and very powerful thing.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, have you mentioned about University Alliance? Yeah.
Oh, no, I haven't actually.
Tell us about it.
So just really quickly, we recently launched the University Alliance, and that's a way that we can make sure that the universities are also committed, and they have the agenda that supporting their Black STEM students to get to the next stage in life is important to them. So the Alliance is all about universities making sure that their students are also aware of all of the programs that we have to offer at BBSTEM, but also that we can share the kind of insights that we get from Black students and staff to the universities. Because there's a lot of times where people don't actually feel confident to, report an issue or say, this is exactly how I feel in an environment. But we write reports from the feedback that we get from any kind of event that we do. And these are the kind of insights that we want to make sure that we're sharing with universities, so that their Black students can have a much more enriching time whilst they're there.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Sarah.
Yeah, so just to add that Imperial's very interested in this, and hopefully there'll be announcements to come in the near future on that.
Yes.
Brilliant. Fantastic. What I would like to say, I always kind of like, there's a question which I'd normally ask, which is, what advice would you give to your younger self? But I think based on what you've said, you're already advising a lot of youngsters, right? So I'm going to ask a slightly different question this week. And that question is, and it's an age-old question, where do you want to see either BBSTEM or yourself develop over the next, say, 5 to 10 years? What would you ideally like to see happen?
So I think for BBSTEM, I'd really love it to be maybe like the partner of choice for all of these companies and organizations and universities to say, okay, if you need BBSTEM's your one-stop shop if you need any support from inspiring young kids to getting career advice, to being linked up with, you know, a Black STEM professional or anything. I'm hoping that, you know, we do get even more big attraction where, you know, people can just say, BBSTEM's your place. And we actually have the people and the team to be able to accommodate all of those resources. That's what my dream would be for that. And then I think in terms of like for me, I still want to be able to develop in the scientific realm. I think I was saying this to you the other day, that I am trained as a chemical engineer, and I think it is important that I still continue to be an expert in my scientific field.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to continue doing over the next 5 years as well.
So you want to have your own personal development, but whilst at the same time you're developing, you want others to be developing and having the opportunities to expand and develop as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Kayisha, it's been wonderful having you with us today. Really inspirational things which you're doing. And you know what, we want to wish you all the success. And if we can be of any support, if you want mentors or anything like that, then please get in contact with us. And I'm sure that those people who are on the call would be more than willing to participate in whichever way. It's been fantastic. It's really good. I'm going to just advertise for next week's. Let me see where I'm at. Right. And so for next week, what we will be having is Associate Professor Donald Palmer will be with us, and he will be telling us a bit about his experiences of belonging. And if you've missed any of the previous installments of Belongings, you can find them on our YouTube site, which is the URLs at the bottom, tinyurl.com, belonging IOA. So thank you very much for coming and joining us this week. So next week we'll have Associate Professor Donald Palmer with us. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Wonderful. Thanks, Kayisha.
Thank you.